And that's why F-Zero is the greatest racing game of all time. Oh, come on, that faucet never stops. Oh. Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and boy do I have some news for you today. Now before I actually jump into it, take this all with a grain of salt. This is all technically rumor until it's actually confirmed by Nintendo themselves, so for sure be careful as you board the hype train. That all said, I've been looking over these recent apparent leaks, and I do have to tell you that there's definitely some reason to consider this. This isn't like your standard sort of 4chan Reddit post where it's basically just a wish list. This is information that I think is likely legitimate, and there's a track history here that we will also discuss. I think that yes, we should be talking about this, there's merit here, and it could be giving us a really good picture in terms of what we should be expecting over the coming months leading into E3 and E3 itself. So it's going to be pretty exciting. We're going to be talking about the rumor and the credibility of it, but also going into what it may mean, breaking it down, and sort of going beyond just the information we see right here. Now before we jump into things, let me go into my social media and such. Now firstly, I plan on going on a podcast with Nintendo Prime, Nate. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a discussion with him about these things. You may be seeing that podcast come out not too long after this, so I'll be making sure to put a link to that podcast, that stream, in the description below once it is available, and make sure to go and give Nate a follow, check out his videos, give him a like. Great content creator who also covers a lot of awesome Nintendo news and theories and things of that nature, so please check him out. Going beyond that, you may see some social media on screen here. You can check that all out. It's linked in the description below. That's for me. And of course, if you like what you're seeing here, you can subscribe. Alright, so where is this apparent leak coming from? Well, the leaks are coming from this Twitter user known as Samus Hunter, who has been leaking Nintendo information for the last few months at least. Earlier this week, they talked about plans leading up to E3 and also E3 themselves. We're going to be getting into that, but first let's talk about some of the things that are leading me to believe that there's a fair bit of credibility here. So when you go to his Twitter page, at the very top you see a pinned tweet, and he shares an image of him stating things in the past that amounted to being true. For example, they were hinting at Splatoon 3. There it is. They were hinting at Mario Golf and Miitopia. There it is. They were hinting at Skyward Sword HD and Age of Calamity DLC. There it is. They were hinting at Famicom Detective Club. There it is. And they were also hinting at a number of announcements for Monster Hunter Rise. There it is. Now let me say, it's entirely possible that this person has been leaking a whole bunch of different things and then deleting some and just sort of controlling the narrative. I've seen that done before, but there's quite a lot here, and while some of it are things that we've predicted on the channel, this is more than prediction it looks like. This looks like actual hard information that they are receiving, and based on what I'm seeing from the track record and everyone that's watching this person and following this person, there doesn't seem to be any evidence of covering up mistakes or creating a false narrative here. It does seem like they've been legitimately sharing this information, and they're simply showing what they've produced over the last few months and has amounted to actually being true. But let's ignore their history, even though I do think there's some credibility already suggested with that. With what they've been saying this week, it's already starting to prove to be a little bit true. So let's talk about the first bit of information we've seen from one of their tweets. Want to know what to expect before E3 2021? Mario Golf Super Rush, Miitopia news, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Monster Hunter Rise update, next game trial for Nintendo Switch Online, Ace Attorney games announcements, and something related to Zelda and Pokemon. While for Pokemon they are planning more big reveals for the already announced games, for Zelda it's not directly related to the sequel of Breath of the Wild. So within that, they were already talking about Ace Attorney game announcements. Guess what was announced like hours ago? Great Ace Attorney is coming to Nintendo Switch. Now, in fairness, this was rated a couple months ago, so you could maybe consider it a really good prediction, but considering everything else that's already there, I feel like definitely this is something that we should be looking at and considering and seeing if it makes sense. Oh, and here's just another little bit of evidence to support the credibility of this leaker. They were also talking about there being a trial for Nintendo Switch Online. Well, they also announced a game trial for Descenders on Nintendo Switch Online. So there you go. So then, what about all the other things? The idea that we're going to get an update on Mario Golf Super Rush and Miitopia news is absolutely a given, I would say. Mario Golf comes out in June. So they're going to have to talk about Mario Golf before it's actually coming out in June, which is the E3 time. So definitely we're getting on news on that regardless. The same applies for Miitopia. It comes out in May. They need to talk about it again before the game actually comes out. As for Animal Crossing New Horizons and Monster Hunter Rise, we're going to be getting updates for these games moving forward. That's just the way it's going to be. So to predict or say that updates are coming, that's not even a crazy thing to say. That's absolutely expected. The Ace Attorney games have already been confirmed, and then the exciting thing here is that something related to Zelda and Pokemon is also coming. So on the note of Pokemon, whenever there's been a normal year with an E3, even if we get an early year Pokemon Presents or Direct, they still have another Pokemon presentation shortly before E3. I'm expecting that to be the same this year, assuming this year is like most other years. Yes, we're going to get Pokemon news shortly before E3. They will mention Pokemon during the actual E3 Direct, but the bulk of the news is going to come like a week or so beforehand where they have like a Pokemon Direct or Presents or something like that, and then hopefully we'll see some Treehouse footage during the E3 time after the E3 Direct. So that's definitely something I would expect. It definitely makes sense. But the interesting thing here is what they're saying about Zelda. Something related to Zelda before E3. And here they say, for Zelda, it's not directly related to the sequel of Breath of the Wild. That does actually make sense to me, because we've been getting continually teased by Onuma about an event where we will be getting details on Breath of the Wild 2. I really do feel like this is all building up to a massive blowout at E3. That's what I think is happening for the sequel to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So if something were to happen for Zelda before E3, I don't think it would be a big Breath of the Wild 2 blowout. However, rumor has it that the Mario Anniversary Direct would have happened a lot sooner in the year than when it happened in 2020 towards it was in September. And according to Samus Hunter, it was maybe even supposed to happen in April. Now, I was thinking that it was maybe going to happen during E3, but when you consider the timing of when they announced Paper Mario the Origami King, that was before the E3 time. It was very interesting that we got that so early on in the year. But when you consider the possibility, as Samus Hunter alludes to in one of their earlier tweets, that maybe the Mario Anniversary Direct should have happened in April, all of a sudden it sort of starts to piece together, because maybe initially they had plans to announce the Mario Anniversary stuff early in the year, around April, and that would have included Paper Mario, and then it would have come out later into the summer. Considering that it was announced in May, if I remember correctly, this is kind of adding up here. So maybe Nintendo did indeed initially intend on having a Mario Anniversary Direct back in April of last year, 2020. So if that's the case, maybe it's also possible that leading into E3, Nintendo will have some Zelda Anniversary announcements starting in April, or early May, somewhere around there. That way they can divvy up the enormous amount of potential Zelda announcements, that way they can have a more focused and concise E3 Direct. Recently, we got a new trademark for Ocarina of Time that isn't for the old Ocarina of Time on N64 or the 3D remake on 3DS, so that's very exciting. And then there's also the credible rumors for Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD coming to Switch. And then of course there's also this rumor for Spirit Tracks coming to the Switch, and then obviously Skyward Sword HD and the Age of Calamity DLC, and none of that even considers Breath of the Wild 2. So there's a whole bunch of potential Zelda announcements that could be made. Maybe Nintendo wants to start making some of those announcements before E3, that way they can focus on other cool games that are coming out later in the year, like maybe a new Donkey Kong, a new Fire Emblem, a new Metroid, and then also of course Breath of the Wild 2 being the big star of the show. I think that's a possibility. Now, it may not amount to an actual Zelda Direct. Maybe they'll simply announce something and give us a little bit of a teaser for the E3 presentation, and the E3 presentation has everything in there. But either way, I can definitely see some sort of Zelda thing happening, considering the amount of things that are supposed to happen for Zelda, supposedly. So keep your eyes peeled on Zelda announcements, guys. I do think there's a decent chance that something could happen before E3, even though I still strongly believe E3 will be where we get most of the Breath of the Wild 2 news. But who knows, maybe Nintendo at least gives us a small little teaser right before the show with what Samus Hunter is alluding to. We shall see. But that doesn't even bring us to the actual E3 leak. So let me go ahead and read what Samus Hunter had to say. Less than 2 months, E3 21. Last week they told me that Nintendo has big plans in store for this year, but COVID is making things difficult to organize. Unfortunately, due to the number of partners, I cannot confirm whether all plans will come to fruition. We will know on May 6th. So definitely pay attention to this date, May 6th. Are we going to get something then? I think when we do get something, if that does happen, this will lend more credibility to a lot of the different things that Samus Hunter is saying. So let's definitely sort of keep that in mind moving forward, but let me read on. I heard that they are trying to organize some tournaments, one of Smash and one to publicize Splatoon 3. In a couple of weeks we'll find out if the project will succeed. Obviously the Treehouse event and the Direct are certain. But I have to say something extra. The train will make at least one more stop before reaching the end. So first, the premise of us getting a Smash tournament at E3, not crazy at all. I definitely think there's a strong possibility that that could be happening. Smash is the kind of thing that Nintendo likes to push, and they've had tournaments before. Them doing it again totally makes sense. Now as for Splatoon 3, that's big, because I think that implies that Splatoon 3 is very far along and could very well be an early 2022 game as opposed to a later or mid-year 2022 game. Now when they revealed this game in the February Nintendo Direct earlier this year, I did feel like it was really far along, but I still felt like it was strange to show off a 2022 game so early on in 2021. But with that in mind, and this potential rumor or leak that may end up being true that we're going to get a Splatoon 3 tournament at E3, or at least there's a plan for that to happen assuming COVID doesn't get in the way, I think that does sort of bode well for Splatoon 3 coming out sooner than later. And I think this is a big deal because when you also consider that Pokemon Legends Arceus is already confirmed to be an early 2022 title, what does that suggest for Nintendo's other plans? What does that suggest for Nintendo's holiday, and so on? If they're going to be coming out with an early Splatoon 3 and an early Legends Arceus in 2022, then the idea of Breath of the Wild 2 coming out around March, early 2022 as well, seems like a bit of a stretch to me, and to me it sort of supports my theory that Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out for the holiday. Of course, there's also the possibility that Breath of the Wild 2 comes out after March 2022 and it's coming way later than we expect. That's also a possibility, and then also there's a possibility that this rumor is not quite right or I'm interpreting it wrong. These are all possibilities, but I'm just saying it sort of seems to be supporting the theories I've been thinking as of late, but we'll see what actually ends up happening here. But let's go focus back on that final thing Samus Hunter had to say. But I have to say something extra. The train will make at least one more stop before reaching the end. It's important to note that this E3 leak came before the leading up to E3 leak, so it's possible that what they're referring to here in terms of their big one more stop, here Samus Hunter's alluding to the Pokemon and Zelda news we could be getting, or maybe just the Zelda news. There is this whole Spirit Tracks rumor. Maybe that's what this is talking about, because it's talking about a train, and, well, Spirit Tracks is a train. There's a whole train in the game. So maybe there's something going on there. Maybe Grezzo is remaking Spirit Tracks, and we could be getting something along the lines of a Link's Awakening remake, but for Spirit Tracks. That would be very lovely to see. I actually never got a chance to play that game on DS, so, you know, if it was made in HD from the ground up by Grezzo coming to Nintendo Switch, that would be very exciting. It certainly makes me scratch my head because there's Breath of the Wild 2 and Skyward Sword HD, and then the Ocarina of Time trademark, and Twilight Princess HD, and Wind Waker HD, and the Age of Calamity DLC. That's a lot of Zelda. Maybe this isn't actually a remake, maybe it's just like the game itself coming with some minor changes. Hard to say, I don't know, but it's certainly interesting to say the least. And if we're going to assume that everything Samus Hunter is saying is true, we're going to start to learn details about all of this at the latest by May 6th. That's just about a couple weeks away. It seems the rumors have been pouring out, one rumor after another after another after another. On this channel, we try to cover the ones that have some credibility to them, but you know, even then, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. That doesn't mean it's gonna actually amount to anything. We shall see. But a lot of these things here do make sense. There are things that I've been sort of thinking. I was sort of expecting Splatoon 3 to be shown off a little bit later into the year, not at E3, but I'm not going to complain about getting Splatoon 3 shown off at E3. That's fine. But either way, it does seem like there is at least Zelda stuff on the horizon with the Ocarina of Time trademark and with what AJ Numa has told us about Breath of the Wild 2. So that's exciting to me because I'm a huge Zelda fan. But anyways, guys, there's so much going on right now. Definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments below. This is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.